On my granddaughter's wedding day, I handed her an envelope with a gift, praying she'd look at me with gratitude, just like she did when she was a little girl. But instead of a smile, she raised her glass and, with a voice that cut through the chatter in that sparkling San Diego ballroom, said, "I always wished I'd had a different father." She hugged her new father-in-law, and I quietly left the hall, my heart sinking. Little did she know, the envelope in her hands would change the course of the whole day. The day before, I'd visited her apartment in Pacific Heights, hoping for a little warmth. The place looked like something out of an architecture magazine, sleek, cold, and expensive, with glass walls overlooking the bay and furniture so white and spotless I was afraid to sit down. I clutched my worn-out cap in my hands, feeling like a misplaced relic among her marble countertops and chrome lamps. "Abby, sweetheart," I began, but she was too busy flipping through a pile of wedding brochures spread across her coffee table. "Look at this, Grandpa," she said, jabbing her French manicured finger at a photograph of a lavish vineyard estate outside Napa Valley. "All my friends are getting married in places like this." She never once looked up. I'd polished my old boots for that visit, practiced what I'd say during the drive, rehearsed how I'd help. My Social Security check covered barely enough for rent and groceries these days, but I'd managed to save $10,000 over 40 years as a truck mechanic. Maybe, I thought, I could help set up tables, lend a hand, offer what I could. But $45,000 for flowers and fancy dresses? My stomach twisted. I tried to reason with her, voice trembling. "Abby, I can give you everything I have. 10,000, that's all I've got. Maybe if I take out a small loan." Her excitement vanished. Her blue eyes hardened. 10,000? That's all? She stood up. "Other fathers take out loans, sell their trucks, remortgage their houses. What are you willing to do for your granddaughter?" I remembered raising her after my wife, Nancy, passed. Double shifts at the shop so Abby could have what other girls had: school field trips, new shoes, piano lessons. I tried, God knows I tried. But the look on her face. "Abby, I could try for a loan. But $45,000? I waved at the designer apartment. "You're doing well yourself. Maybe we could do something cheap?" She snapped, tossing a magazine down so hard it scattered others. "Do you know how much David's father is paying for his son's wedding? $65,000. That's normal for people like them." David, her fiancé. His dad ran a line of hotels up the coast. "Grandpa, I'm 29, Abby continued. "This is my one chance to have the wedding I deserve. My friends' fathers move heaven and earth for them. You're just a—" She didn't finish, but the word failure hung between us. She walked to the door. "Just go, Grandpa. I can't look at you right now." I walked outside, blinking in the California sun. Her building's driveway was full of shiny Teslas and Range Rovers. I found my old Chevy pickup, blue paint faded, engine ticking as it cooled. My house looked even smaller as I pulled into the driveway, paint peeling, lawn brown from another drought, wind chimes swaying in the breeze. Inside, the silence pressed down on me. Nancy's old reading chair sat untouched by the window. She'd always believed Abby deserved everything: college, a good career, the best life. Our family photos on the mantel, Abby's graduation, her first piano recital, suddenly looked like snapshots from someone else's life. I asked Nancy's memory, "Did I fail her? 40 years working, and this is all I can give?" The bills piled on the kitchen table, mocking me. I'd be done with the mortgage in 15 months. My pension check barely stretched to cover utilities, but maybe, just maybe, I could do more for Abby. That night, I called the 24-hour line at Union Savings Bank. "Yes," I told the woman on the phone. "I'd like to ask about a loan. $45,000, please." My hands shook as I spelled out my details, listening to the click of keys, the sound of my own hope. "Mr. Parker," she said. We can schedule an appointment tomorrow morning. Bring your documents, please. Nancy always said, sometimes love means doing things that scare you. So that night I made up my mind. I would take a risk for Abby. I would find a way to be the grandfather she wanted, even if it meant giving up everything. Morning came early. I hadn't slept a wink, mind racing with numbers and worries. I pressed my only good shirt and drove across town to the Union Savings Bank branch on Broadway. The building was glass and steel, cold and impersonal. Young professionals hustled through the doors in crisp suits, the kind I'd never owned. I clutched my manila folder, pension statements, utility bills, a tattered pay stub from my last job at Jensen's Auto. The loan officer, Ms. Rebecca Williams, looked not much older than Abby. She had the same no-nonsense way of speaking, tapping my information into her computer without ever looking up. So, Mr. Parker, she began, you're looking for $45,000. That's a significant sum, especially for someone on a fixed income. It's for my granddaughter's wedding, I said, voice rough. She deserves something special. I want to help. Rebecca pursed her lips, fingers dancing across the keyboard. With your pension and Social Security, the maximum we can offer is $30,000. The interest rate is 17.9%. Are you sure you want to do this? The numbers made my head spin. Monthly payments would be nearly $700, half my income. I hesitated, then nodded. She's worth it. The paperwork took an hour. Pages and pages of forms, warnings about the risks, late fees, penalties if I fell behind. Rebecca explained everything with careful patience, but her tone said she'd seen old men like me make bad decisions before. At last, she slid a cashier's check across the desk. I walked out of the bank lighter in the wallet but heavier in the heart. $30,000 from the bank, plus my $10,000 in savings, $40,000, not quite what Abby had wanted, but all I could give. I drove home, the check burning in my jacket, praying it would be enough to earn a place at my granddaughter's side. By the time I reached Abby's apartment, the day was fading into orange twilight. She opened the door in yoga pants and a Stanford hoodie, casual, but every piece probably cost more than a month of my groceries. Grandpa? She said, surprised. What are you doing here? I handed her the envelope. I got a loan. Here's $40,000 for your wedding, Abby. Her eyes widened for a moment. But instead of gratitude, her mouth tightened. Oh, Grandpa, honestly, it's too late. David's father is covering everything. He wants the wedding to be a statement. I stood there, hand outstretched, feeling smaller than I ever had before. I took a loan at a high interest rate, Abby. You said you needed help. She waved it away, already returning to her laptop. Don't worry about it. Just return the money. I appreciate the thought, but David's family's got it covered. You don't have to play hero. The words stung more than I wanted to show. I mumbled something, stuffed the envelope back in my pocket, and shuffled out the door. Down the hall, a young couple passed by, laughing about wedding plans and honeymoons, their joy a sharp contrast to the emptiness in my chest. Driving home, the city lights blurred through the windshield. 40 years of fatherhood, and all I had to show for it was a canceled check and a granddaughter who thought money mattered more than love. Back home, I brewed a mug of Nancy's favorite tea, chamomile and lemon, and sat in her old chair by the window. Photos of Abby lined the mantel, her first steps, her graduation, the two of us fishing at Lake Arrowhead. When had appreciation turned into expectation? When had love become a transaction? I stared at the wedding invitation, elegant heavy cardstock, gold letters spelling out a ceremony at St. Francis Church, noon on a Saturday. But a sticky note from Abby read, Grandpa, double-check the time. There might be a change. The next morning my phone rang. Abby, brisk and businesslike, talking about seating charts, vendor appointments, a dress fitting I was. Welcome to attend. Just try not to embarrass me. I agreed, as always, swallowing my pride. At the bridal salon, I stood against the wall while Abby and her friends debated the virtues of silk versus lace, giggling over wedding hashtags and photo filters. "This is my grandpa," Abby told her friends. "He means well. He's a little old-fashioned, but sweet." Sweet. Like a child, or a pet, not the man who raised her when her parents died, who worked double shifts to buy her first car, who never missed a piano recital. That night, unable to sleep, I sat down and wrote a letter. The words came hard. I tore up the first 5 drafts before settling on the truth, the sacrifices, the love, the pain of feeling replaced. I put the letter in an envelope, sealing it with a shaking hand. Soon I knew Abby would have to understand what real love looked like, and what it cost. The days leading up to Abby's wedding passed like a slow-motion blur. My phone buzzed with her texts, reminders about the rehearsal dinner, instructions about my outfit, details for events I'd barely seemed invited to. Each message was more distant than the last. It became clear, bit by bit, that my role in her big day had shrunk to the bare minimum. On Thursday, she called about the engagement party. "It's at the Pacific Social Club, Grandpa. Don't stress about coming, though. David's family has a certain image to keep. Maybe just skip this one, okay? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." I knew what that meant. I wasn't polished enough for her new world. My old, clean but frayed, sports coat didn't measure up to the tailored suits her future in-laws wore. "Sure, honey. Whatever's best for you." I hung up, hands trembling, the words caught in my throat. Friday night, I sat alone at home, the wedding invitation propped up on the kitchen table. Nancy's wedding ring rested in my palm. I thought about all we'd done for Abby, the sleep-deprived nights after her parents' accident, the scraped knees and lost teeth, the steady presence we promised to be. Now I was a background actor in her life, someone to be managed, not loved. Saturday dawned bright and cloudless. I dressed carefully, double-checking the time on the invitation, 1 p.m. St. Francis Church, Main Chapel. I pressed my only tie, the same black one I'd worn to Nancy's funeral, to Abby's high school graduation, to every important event. I arrived at 12:50 sharp. The church parking lot was already full. Guests streamed toward the doors, chatting and laughing. As I reached the entrance, a woman in a navy dress hurried past. "We're late," she called to her husband. Inside, organ music and voices filled the air, not prelude, but ceremony. My heart thudded. I stopped a stranger near the door. "What time did the ceremony start?" I asked, voice tight. "Noon, I believe. The invitation said so. Are you family?" I showed him my invitation, 1 p.m., printed in gold. His read 12 o'clock. We stared at each other in confusion. "Oh," he said, sympathy softening his tone. "You're the bride's family? I thought that was her father, up there, gray-haired gentleman, very dignified. Walked her down the aisle. That was David's father. He'd taken my place." I stood, frozen, staring through the crack in the door at the sunlit sanctuary. There was Abby, radiant in her white dress, David beside her, and at her side, the man who'd written the checks, beaming as he gave her away. My chest tightened. I realized with cold clarity, Abby and her new family had given me a different invitation. I'd been scheduled out of my own granddaughter's wedding. Excluded from the moment every grandparent dreams of, replaced by someone with more money, more style, more status. I staggered out of the church, found a park bench across the street, and sat heavily, the letter to Abby burning a hole in my pocket. I watched other guests arriving late, some confused, most unaware of what had happened. I saw them slip inside, catch the last of the ceremony, take their place in her perfect new world. I sat with the envelope in my lap, staring at it for what felt like hours. Inside, 4 pages of my heart, the truth about Abby's life, about the sacrifices we made, about what it meant to be chosen, not just born. The wedding bells rang as the ceremony ended. I saw the crowd spill from the church, Abby in the center, David's arm around her. I stood, brushing dust from my trousers, and made my way toward the reception hall, the envelope clutched in my hand. The reception was held at the Solana Beach Resort, all glass and sunlight, the Pacific sparkling beyond the windows. White linens, fresh peonies, strings of golden lights. I walked in alone, just another face in the crowd. Most guests ignored me. A few recognized me as Abby's grandfather, nodding politely before moving on. Abby was radiant, her smile broad, laughter ringing through the room as she greeted guests. David hovered nearby, his father holding court with the wedding planner, his mother chatting with distant relatives. I caught Abby's eye. She looked at me, startled, then forced a smile and beckoned me over. "Grandpa! You made it," she said, voice tight. I handed her the envelope. "A gift. Please open it in private." She shrugged, handing it off to David. "Put it with the other gifts, Han." "No, thank you." No sign she remembered the man who'd raised her. Just a casual gesture, another detail for someone else to handle. I melted into the crowd, quietly, dignified, refusing to make a scene. The music played, the guests danced, and I watched my granddaughter's new life unfold without me. But the letter waited, and I knew that soon Abby would read it. She would finally understand what a real father, and a real family, looked like. The wedding reception buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. I drifted near the edge of the celebration, half listening to toasts about new beginnings and the perfect match. The room was a blur of tailored suits, sequined dresses, and the low hum of privilege. All around me, David's family welcomed Abby like their own, their voices full of warm, practiced charm. A waiter offered me champagne. I took a glass, though my hands trembled. I found a spot by the window, looking out at the restless blue of the Pacific. In the distance, children played on the sand, their shouts barely reaching the polished sanctuary of the resort ballroom. I remembered Abby as a child, running on that same beach, her small hand gripping mine, the laughter of my late wife, Nancy, floating on the breeze. Now, as I watched, I felt as though I was looking through glass at a life I could no longer touch. Suddenly, the room hushed. Abby, dazzling in white and gold, stepped onto the center stage, her champagne flute held high. "Everyone, please," she called, her voice rising above the murmurs. The photographer moved in, ready to capture her moment. "I want to thank all of you who made this day possible," Abby began. "But especially David's father. You've shown me what it means to have a real dad, one who truly cares. I always dreamed of having a different father, and today, that dream came true." A cold wave washed over me. Around the room, glasses hovered midair. Some guests looked away, embarrassed. Others watched me, their pity plain. David's father stepped forward, embracing Abby. "You're the daughter I never had," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The applause was uncertain and short-lived. I stood, silent, my face blank, the old dignity that comes from decades of disappointment holding me upright. I finished my champagne in a single gulp, set the glass on a nearby table, and walked slowly toward the exit. There was no point making a scene. No angry words would change what had just happened. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with sunset. I leaned against my old Chevy, the sea air stinging my eyes. For a long moment, I just breathed, letting the pain ebb and flow. I thought about the letter, now hidden among all the expensive wedding gifts, a letter that told Abby everything she never wanted to hear. I drove home with the windows down, the evening breeze cold on my face. My phone rang halfway across town. It was Abby, her number lighting up my dashboard. I let it ring. She left a message, her voice bright and hurried. "Grandpa, we're opening gifts now. Some of these presents are amazing. Call me back." At home, I made Nancy's tea and sat in her old chair, staring at the ceiling. My phone rang again. Grandpa, we found your envelope. What kind of gift is private? Should we open it now? There was a nervous laugh at the end, one I knew too well. The third call came as I was folding my only good shirt, the one I'd worn, once, to walk her down the aisle in my dreams. This time, Abby's voice was strained. Grandpa, I read your letter. This isn't funny. You can't mean it. Call me, please. By the fourth call, she sounded scared. Grandpa, this can't be true. You have to call me. You have to tell me you're joking. I didn't answer. I finished my tea, set the cup on the table, and began to pack the few things that mattered: Nancy's ring, Abby's graduation photo, my old fishing license. The house felt lighter with every item I put away. Through the night, my phone buzzed with calls. 10, then 20, then 30 missed calls, all from Abby. Each one more desperate than the last. I sat in the dark, listening to her voicemails, the confusion, then anger, then pleading. Grandpa, you can't do this to me. You're my family. I didn't mean what I said. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But the truth had already found her. In that letter, I told Abby what Nancy and I had never dared to say out loud, that she had been chosen, adopted after her parents died, raised with all the love we had to give. I told her about the sacrifices, the double shifts, the lonely nights when I'd wondered if I could ever fill the hole left in her heart. And I told her, finally, that real love was never about money, or weddings, or fancy addresses. It was about choice. About showing up, year after year, even when it wasn't easy. Even when it wasn't wanted. By dawn, there were 40 missed calls. I turned the phone off and set it beside Nancy's ring, ready for the next chapter, whatever that would be. When sunrise painted the living room walls gold, I sat in the quiet and listened to the world waking up. It was the first time in years that I didn't feel obligated to chase someone else's approval. My phone was still off, resting on the table with Nancy's wedding ring. The house, for once, didn't feel empty, it felt peaceful. I looked around at the old photos on the mantel. Abby, toothless and grinning in her first school portrait. Nancy, laughing as she held a birthday cake. Our little family, built from the pieces left behind by tragedy, held together by love and stubborn hope. I realized I'd spent years worrying about being enough for Abby, enough money, enough support, enough love. Maybe, all along, I'd been more than she could ever see. Packing was easier than I expected. I took only what I needed: work boots, a couple of shirts, my fishing hat, and a shoebox full of Nancy's letters. The rest, I left behind. The old house would soon be someone else's responsibility, a young family, maybe, or a retired couple wanting a quiet place to grow tomatoes. By noon I was ready. I loaded my bags into the Chevy and took one last look around the kitchen, the sunlight glinting off the battered formica table, the refrigerator plastered with faded magnets, the doorway where I'd measured Abby's height every year. My heart squeezed tight, but not with regret. Just a quiet acceptance. I turned my phone back on, bracing for the onslaught. Instantly it vibrated with dozens of new voicemails and messages. Abby's voice, frantic and tearful, filled my inbox. Grandpa, please. I'm so sorry. Just call me back. You don't understand, I didn't mean any of it. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe all those years? Then anger. How could you humiliate me like that? Everyone's asking questions. David's family is furious. And finally, a softer plea. Grandpa, I need you. Please, just talk to me. I'll do anything. Each message was a chapter of her unraveling, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for not picking up. I owed her the truth, not my silence or my suffering. I owed myself peace. I drove south along the coast, passing fields of strawberries and artichokes, the ocean shining to my right. I thought about Nancy, How she used to love road trips, the way she'd stick her hand out the window and let the wind run through her fingers. I imagined her beside me, humming old country songs, reminding me that sometimes the only way to heal is to leave the wound behind. By late afternoon, I reached a small town called Willow Springs. It wasn't much: a diner, a hardware store, a faded mural of a bear on the water tower. But it felt honest, and honest was enough. I checked into a motel, paying cash for a week, and carried my bags inside. That first night, I sat outside my room as the sun dipped below the hills. The air smelled of pine and distant wood smoke. Across the parking lot, a little boy chased his dog, laughing. The motel manager, a wiry man with a kind smile, offered me a cup of coffee and a slice of peach pie. We talked about fishing, the weather, the way big cities made people forget what mattered. For the first time in decades, nobody needed me to perform, to apologize, to compete. I was just a man with a story and a past, nothing more, nothing less. The next morning, I walked into the Willow Springs diner and found a booth by the window. The waitress, Ruth, poured my coffee and asked if I was passing through or planning to stay a while. "Not sure yet," I said, and she just nodded like she understood. As I ate, I thought about the life I'd left behind. Abby's voice haunted me, but in a new way. I realized she would have to face the consequences of her choices: her pride, her hurtful words, her need for approval from strangers. For once, I couldn't fix it for her. She would have to find her own way. After breakfast, I strolled down Main Street, passing the town library and the little white church at the corner. Everywhere, people nodded and said hello. There was no judgment in their eyes, just curiosity and welcome. I found a bench beneath a maple tree and sat in the dappled shade, breathing deep and letting the peaceful silence fill me. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe I'd stay in Willow Springs, maybe move on. But I knew, wherever I ended up, I'd be living for myself, not chasing someone else's impossible dreams. That night, as I watched the stars come out over the hills, I finally let myself hope for something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. By my third day in Willow Springs, a new kind of routine had settled in, a rhythm as steady as the ocean tide I'd left behind. Each morning, I walked the sleepy Main Street, waving to neighbors and trading a few friendly words with Ruth at the diner. I bought a paper from the general store, read it slowly with my coffee, then wandered down to the town park to watch the world go by. For the first time in decades, I found peace in doing nothing at all. Every so often, I'd check my phone. Old habits die hard. The missed calls and messages from Abby had stopped flooding in, but a few new ones waited for me, quieter now. She was still processing the truth I'd given her, wrestling with feelings she'd never let herself feel before. One voicemail, left late at night, stood out from the rest. "Grandpa, I don't know what to say. I'm angry, but mostly I'm just lost. My whole life I thought I understood where I belong. You and Nana gave up everything for me and I never saw it. I'm sorry. I don't know if you'll ever come back. I wish I could take back what I said. Please, just call when you're ready." Her words echoed in my chest for a long time. I spent my days exploring the edges of Willow Springs. I helped an old-timer named Ed fix the roof on his tool shed. I joined a group of retired fellows for a card game in the back of the hardware store. The slow, honest work of living filled up the empty spaces inside me that had ached for so long. Sometimes I'd walk by the church in the evening, its doors open and the faint sound of singing drifting out across the lawn. Nancy would have liked it here, I thought. She always believed there was goodness to be found anywhere if you just stayed long enough to look. I began to find myself again, not as Abby's grandfather, not as the man who was never quite enough for someone else's dreams, but as Parker, the man who'd survived more than most, who'd built a life out of loss and love and hard choices. A week passed. Then another. I started to think maybe Willow Springs could be home for a while. I took on a little work at the local garage, Nothing fancy, just changing oil, fixing brakes, swapping stories with the customers. The work was honest, the pay was small, but it made me feel useful again. On my days off, I'd sit by the river that ran just outside town, fishing pole in hand, Nancy's ring on a cord around my neck. The water sparkled in the afternoon sun, and I'd remember those years when Abby was small, when every day was an adventure, when love was simple and gratitude was enough. Still, a part of me wondered about her. Had she learned anything from the letter I left? Was she angry, ashamed, or just sad? Did she miss me at all? Each night, as I watched the sky turn from pink to deep blue, I tried to send her silent forgiveness, hoping she could feel it, hoping she'd find her own way to peace. Then, one Friday afternoon, as I was finishing up a tune-up on an old Ford, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Abby, but this time her voice was quieter, more grown-up somehow. Grandpa, I know you need space. I'm not asking you to come back, not unless you want to. I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. For telling me the truth, for raising me, for loving me. I was wrong at the wedding. I was selfish and blind. I see it now. I hope, wherever you are, you're happy. I hope you're free. I love you. I stood there in the garage, hands greasy, heart pounding, listening to her words over and over. Tears slid down my face, not of grief, but of relief. The heavy weight I'd carried for years, the burden of not being enough, finally lifted. That night, as I watched the moon rise over Willow Springs, I thought about the road I'd traveled. The disappointments, the heartbreak, the sacrifices that had nearly broken me. I thought about Nancy's quiet wisdom, her gentle faith that love always mattered, even when it was unappreciated. And I realized, finally, that forgiveness wasn't just something I owed Abby. It was something I owed myself. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd call her back. The sun rose gentle and golden over Willow Springs, its light spilling through my motel window as I sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand. For a moment, I watched the dust dance in the air and felt a calm I hadn't known in years. No more waiting for someone else's approval. No more rehearsing apologies for what I could or couldn't give. Today, I was simply myself. I scrolled to Abby's number. My finger hovered, heart thumping, then I tapped. Call. The line rang twice before her voice, shaky but hopeful, came through. Grandpa? Hey, kiddo. My own voice sounded rough, but steady. I got your message. There was a pause. I heard her take a shaky breath. I'm so glad you called. I've been thinking about what you wrote, what I said. I'm sorry for all of it. I never wanted to hurt you. I got caught up in what I thought mattered. I know, I said quietly. I got caught up too, trying to make sure you never felt the kind of loss I did. Maybe I gave too much, maybe I protected you from too many hard truths. But all I ever wanted was for you to be happy. Abby sniffled. I am happy, Grandpa. I want to learn how to be. But I want you in my life, if you'll have me. I leaned back, looking out at the dew on the grass, the world so full of second chances. That's all I ever wanted. I just need you to understand, love isn't measured in dollars, or weddings, or big gestures. It's in all the little things, all the years we shared. There was silence, the kind that felt like healing. Will you come see me? Abby finally asked, timid, almost like the little girl she used to be. Not right away, I answered gently. I need a little more time out here. I'm learning to live for myself for the first time in a long while. But I'll call. And when we're both ready, I'll visit. I'd like that, Abby said, voice brighter now. And Grandpa? I love you. Thank you for everything. Even for telling me the truth, even when it hurt. I love you too, kiddo, I replied, and I meant it with every bit of the stubborn, battered love I'd gathered over a lifetime. After we hung up, I didn't feel regret, or pain, or longing, just peace. I stepped out into the morning, the air sharp and clear. Willow Springs was waking up, Ruth at the diner waved, Ed called out from across the street, the little church bell rang in the distance. My story wasn't over. Maybe I'd find a reason to stay here a while longer. Maybe, one day, Abby and I would sit together again, two people who'd finally learn the hardest lesson of all, that being family is about choosing each other, again and again, no matter the mistakes, no matter the past. I fixed up my room, packed my small bag, and strolled to the riverbank, casting a line into the gentle current. The sun was warm on my face. I thought of Nancy, how she'd laugh at my fishing hat, how she'd squeeze my hand and say, "You did good, old man. You did the best you could." And for the first time in years I believed her. Let the past be the past. The future was open, a stretch of road and sky, second chances, and forgiveness. I didn't know where I was going next, but I wasn't afraid. I'd given everything I could. I'd found my worth again. Somewhere, not far from here, my granddaughter was learning her own lessons about love, family, and forgiveness. I hoped she'd be okay. I hoped she'd remember the man who chose her, not for the perfection of her wedding, but for the constancy of his heart. As the river glimmered and the breeze carried the sweet smell of pine, I smiled, casting my line, and let hope guide me forward.